Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. The most important updates are coming from Avdiivka area. After the Russians managed to establish control over the area along the railways, currently the Russian forces are trying to dig in deeper and to prepare themselves before the next step of offensive operation in this direction. The weather is not so good in these areas, so that's why the Russians are not able to use the air intelligence and reconnaissance using drones and so on. So the Russians and the Ukrainians are waiting for normal weather to continue clashes in this area, but there are still artillery duels. Furthermore, according to latest geolocation we have, the Russians still haven't managed to cross and to capture the railways fortifications that located on the north of Krasnogorovka. On this video we can see how the Russians but attacked the Ukrainian fortification below the railways, and as a result of that strike there was a very heavy explosion and secondary detonation. So this is like the final steps before another wave of attack in this direction, and probably there are very high chances that during this weekend the Russians will be able to capture this territory and they will be able to continue their offensive operation further, and this will allow the Russians to establish a very powerful stronghold in fortifications on the south of the village by the name of Novokalinovo and Keramik. So this is the main priority target for the Russians on the north, at least during the next few days. When talking about southern direction, the Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces using FPV drones. This night, the Russian sources published another series of videos of FPV drone strikes. So there are very heavy clashes on the southern direction. And some Russian experts, military experts like Rybar, and some Western experts like Syriac have already reported that the Russians managed to develop some progress and to capture more territories and more trenches exactly on the southern direction. So as you can see why the Russians have some rest and some operational pause on the north, the Russians changed their focus on the south, and currently the next few days I expect very heavy clashes and Russian attacks on the south. So according to, for example, Syriac, the Russians managed to establish control over some tree lines, over some fortifications between Oputne, Vadiane and Avdiivka. So this is the progress of the Russian forces, and obviously they're going to continue. According to the military experts Rybar, the Russians managed to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt, also the same area between Oputne, Vadiane and Avdiivka, and also the Russians managed to advance along the Donetsk road, circle road. So as a result of clashes, as a result of offensive operation, according to Rybar, the Russians managed to establish control over this territory and are getting closer to the main Ukrainian fortification area that located on the southwest of Avdiivka, and we're talking about this stronghold. And I expect that maybe the next few days the Russians also will start making attempts to attack this territory with the purpose to capture this. If the Russians are able to capture this territory, this will allow them to short the distance between the main Russian fortifications and positions, Avdiivka itself, and the quarter number 9. This area, and the Russians from these positions will be able to continue their offensive operation further to the north. So this is a very important operation. This is a very important part of Avdiivka news operation. During the previous night, the Ukrainians, to slow down the Russians at least a little bit, were bombing and attacking the city, the capital of the PR, with cluster rounds. We haven't received any numbers and any updates regarding the losses, but as you can see, this is another violence, another military crime against the capital, against the civilian area in Donetsk People Republic. Furthermore, very interesting update we got from the global scope, from the Ukraine, from the special military operation. On this scene, on this video, you can see the soldier or commander of Ukrainian battalion, Ukrainian brigade, Bogdan Khmelnytsky. And these forces, these are ex-Ukrainian soldiers who were captured by the Russians during the special military operation, and these soldiers took a decision to join Russian army and to fight against Kiev and against Zelensky regime. So this is very interesting update, because as I understand, the Russians are planning to start this phase, the phase when they need to collect and to create some forces who will support Russia, and these forces and the base of these forces should be the ex-Ukrainian army and ex-Ukrainian soldiers. Anyway, the Russians are planning to continue special military operation, and of course they need some support among the locals. Now we are moving to the south Donetsk direction of Novomikhailivka. Today also the deep state map updated their maps, and according to their map, the Russians also managed to achieve some progress on the south. If you remember, yesterday we discussed the video, very powerful video, how the Russians were demining this area, and as I understand, based on that video, deep state map took a decision to update their map after us as well. Now we are moving further to Zaporizhia and South Donetsk direction, Vremivka direction. When talking about the Zaporizhia area, there are no updates from the ground. The Ukrainians during the previous days were defeated in the vicinity of Robotyne. Currently the weather is also not so good, so nobody attacks, nobody were attacking during the previous night. The only thing we got is some geolocations both from the Russian and from the Ukrainian side. On this video you can see how the Russians in a very deep rear of Ukraine defensive belt managed to discover some hidden positions, and as a result of Iskander strike, the Russians destroyed another artillery system, or even maybe something bigger, on the Zaporizhia direction. So very interesting video with very powerful usage of Iskander. The Ukrainians from their side discovered the Russian radars or electronic warfare equipment in the vicinity of the city by the name of Novoyegorovka. So these are equipment. These are like equipment that the Russians use to make some problems with the connections, with communication of Ukrainian forces. The Ukrainians discovered that equipment, and as a result of HIMARS strike, that equipment was destroyed. So we can see that no matter there are no clashes and complete absence of activity on the ground, there are still a lot of work for artillery forces of both sides, either the Russians and the Ukrainians. On Kherson direction, there are no changes on the ground, but the Ukrainians start or continue using FPV drones massively. And as you can see, according to two geolocations, one of the focus of FPV drones, Ukrainian FPV drones in the vicinity of Krynki, the second area of the usage on the north of Podstepne. And both these areas are located in front of Ukrainian footholds, one of foothold in Krynki and the second one on the north of Podstepne. For example, in the vicinity of Krynki, the Ukrainians managed to discover the position of Russian tank, and as a result of a few strikes with FPV drones, the tank was damaged or even maybe destroyed. So we see that the Russians also have concentrated significant number of forces around Krynki. They have reserves, and they are the main purpose of these forces not to storm Krynki with attempt to force the Ukrainians to step back, but to create a barrier. To create like unpenetrable barrier for the Ukrainians. While the Ukrainians continue concentration forces in Krynki, the Russians have possibility to attack them and destroy during the crossing, during the forcing, during the, let's say, movements between the islands, and the Ukrainians do have losses, and this is something like a trap. On the Pyshanovka, Podstepne area, the same situation. The Ukrainians understand that they need to penetrate the defense belt, they need to develop the foothold, because currently the Ukrainians are located in this area as under the open sky, and then they can be attacked by the Russians with any types of weapon. So that's why they try to attack with FPV drones the Russian positions, trying to force the Russians to step back. And after that, the Ukrainians will have possibilities to take under control Russian trenches, to bring more forces, and to develop the foothold. So this is the situation in this area, and I expect more attempts from the Ukrainian side to attack these territories with the purpose to force the Russians to step back. So now we see at least two footholds that the Ukrainians are planning to develop. Furthermore, the Western deployments map have already reported and shown us that the Ukrainians have completely redeployed the brigades of 35th Brigade, 36th Brigade, and the 38th Brigade and 37th Brigade on the Dnipro bank of the Dnipro River. And you can check this information in the Western deployment maps. And that means that the Ukrainians are going to intensify actions and to make more attempts to cross the river and to create more footholds on the Russian bank of Dnipro River. Very difficult and complicated situation. From one side, we understand that the situation, this mission might be very suicide from the Ukrainian side, but from the other side, the facts are saying that Ukrainians have already established two footholds, and what can make them lose these footholds, and maybe the Ukrainians will make more. So very complicated situation. From one side, I'm trying to say that I don't believe in progress and success of Ukrainian forcing crossing the river operation, but from the other side, the facts are saying completely opposite. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to be next, obviously. Now we are moving to Zaluzhny. We got some updates from the Ukrainian commander-in-chief, and he had meeting with the US generals and US military authorities in Europe. Furthermore, some Western NATO officers have already reported that they expect that the Russians are going to have significant progress during autumn and winter. And as I understand, the Western authorities, military authorities, are trying to find a solution how not to allow the collapse of Ukraine front line, how to survive during the upcoming autumn and winter, and how to prepare themselves before the next spring and summer counter-offensive operations. So very interesting. As I understand, the war in 2024 is going to continue. Nobody is going to retreat and to step back from the current positions. When talking about Kupiansk and Liman front lines, we haven't received almost anything. For example, interesting video we got from Kislovka, Kotlerovka, Stepovo-Nasilovka area, the area of the main clashes between Russian army and Ukraine army. On this video, we can see how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian artillery system Krab, and as a result of counter-artillery strike using the probably Krasnopol hit, the Ukrainian artillery force system was destroyed. The Ukrainians were using this artillery system to support their defense forces in Stepovo, Novoselka, Kislovka, Kotlerovka, tactical areas. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.